In the previous video we found out what a procedure was, i.e. just a job that we can run but doesn't do much more than that. We also found out that we can pass in arguments into a procedure, and another word for arguments is parameters. So we can see in this procedure we've passed in x and y. We also found out that things that we need to pass in when we call a function, so if I go and call add, the two things that we need to pass in here, the two arguments or the two parameters, don't have to be named the same as what they are inside that procedure. So I could call in here first number and pass in second number also, and this will simply pass in 5 and 10 into our procedure, and then our procedure then tells it to print these numbers out. I'm going to simplify this step into two steps here. So I'm going to say, let's say the total equals what we had in here, which is x plus y, and then we'll just print the total. So we just say, right, well the total, this new variable we're creating, equals x plus y, and then we'll print whatever that came to. Let's just run this and make sure it works, see if we've got any errors. Oh, we missed our colon on the end of our function, our procedure I should say. 15, so yes, it added the two numbers, they both got passed in fine, they got stored as total, and then we printed out total. Now, the next thing we might like to do is look at how we could turn this into a function. So a function is almost the same thing, apart from it has a return value. So we're really talking about these two extra terms that we've got here. Now, what we often want to do is separate certainly what we graphically print out from the actual mechanics of what are going on. And for that purpose in this case, I'm going to say, well, actually as part of the job of the add, I don't need to print, because printing has nothing to do with adding. What I might like to do is to print the result. Now, if I were to do simply now run that function, so if I just call that by typing add, and again we'll pass in our first number and our second number, go and run that, and we'll see we've already got our 15 here from the last time we ran, but if we run again, very boringly nothing actually gets printed. Yes, we haven't told anything to print. The program still did run this procedure. It added x and y together, which were 5 and 10, and it stored them inside total, and then it completely forgot about total. To the point where even after the procedure has been called, if I try and say, well, let's go and print out the total, it says, hold up, total is not defined. I don't know of anything called total. And there's a reason for this. When you go inside a procedure, the variables that are created from inside that procedure are only accessible inside that procedure. After the procedure, they are killed. They no longer exist. Now this is great unless we want to return something from the procedure, unless we want to get something out of the procedure. So what we can say is we can ask it to return something from the procedure when it's called. So I can say use the keyword return, which is the same in most languages, and we can just say what we want to return. Well, I would like to return whatever the total is. Now how does that work in practically? Let's have a little go. So in here we have our job still, our procedure that can say, right, we'll add the first number and the second number, add those two things together and store it in total, and then we return it. When it returns it, it basically substitutes this part of the code with that return value. So this job gets run, and then all of this writing here gets switched out for whatever was returned by total. So we could tell it to print this job. Now the key point to notice here is because we've got a return value of total, this has now become a function, and that's the only difference between a procedure and a function, is that a function has a return value. So if I go and put some spaces in here just so you can see a little bit clearer, this here is our function being called, and when it finishes it will return total. We know total equals 15, so it will print 15. Let's just try running that. Nice. So now we've separated out the logic that we have here from the actual printing. We could do a lot with this. We could return a value and add it to something else. So we could say, well, yeah, get the value that I'll get if I add those two numbers together, and then we'll add another 5, hopefully taking us up to 20. So if we run that, and sure enough, we're now printing out 20. I could just say, well, I don't actually want to print on this line because it looks a little bit untidy. Let's go and run that procedure again, but let's store its value. So let's just go and say answer equals whatever we get from our add function, and quite nicely idle's IDE, idle the IDE is telling us that we need to pass in an x and a y value. So the first thing I'm going to pass in is the first number, and the other thing I'm going to pass in is the second number. And now it will get stored in answer. If we run this, of course, it's still not going to print the answer, because we at no point told it to print. It did its job and nothing happened. Well, something did happen, we just didn't print out what happened. So let's just go and print out the answer. Print answer. Run that one more time. We can now see that we called the function returned its value of 15 and stored it in answer, and then we printed the answer. This means that we were able to get our information from inside the function and get it back out to where we called it from.